Hello, listeners, and welcome to that corner of the Geek Show that likes to look at the good, the bad, and the bewildering of movies, either starring, about, or by pop stars. No, the podcast covers a broad range of musical and cinematic genres, from documentaries to science fiction, from country and western to hip-hop. I'm your host, Graham Williamson. I'm a video artist and a writer for The Geek Show, Byline Times, and We Are Cult. And I've been joined this week by...
You've been joined by Mark Cunliffe. I am also a writer at The Geek Show. Horrified, We Are Cult. I have a chapter in Scar for Life Volume 2, which is available from lulu.com. And I've also just had an article published in Temporal Boundary Press.
Whoa!
Ooh, yeah.
That sounds really heady. Why? Like, what even is the title?
It's some weird sort of little fanzine about like sort of hauntology and curios and interesting stuff. And I've wrote about the times when sort of like detective drama in the 80s went a little bit strange. So it's sort of episodes of Bergerac investigating the occult and a Juliet Bravo Halloween special, if you could believe such a thing ever existed. And I've got it's a two-part article. The second part is coming out in December, I think. And that will look at stuff like Hamish Macbeth and what was the other one? Dangerfield, an episode of Dangerfield as well. Don't know if everybody remembers that one. Yeah.
I remember there was like a whole series of Heartbeat where they just decided that they wanted to make the X-Files instead. That was the 90s were an interesting time.
It's just such a weird time when there was real interesting experimentation on sort of like mainstream drama, which just doesn't happen anymore. And I've always really been interested by that because it's like at least one episode a series, so we just went, fuck it, let's just say that an alien might have landed. It's genius. It really is. People should take risks like that more often. Walford in EastEnders, Walford is built on a ancient Indian burial ground. That's what I want. That's the storyline I'm waiting for. It might explain why they're all so fucking miserable.
I was going to say it would fill in a lot of blanks about why EastEnders is the way it is.
Should do it.
Yeah. We're staying in the 90s, right? We're going.
We are. Yeah. We're on
back to the 90s.
Isn't all just thrown together, you know?
We did actually just throw that link together, though.
We did. Truthfully, we did. Yeah.
But we're talking about Gridlock'd, and we're talking about one of, I think, the great what ifs of music / cinema history, which is like, you know, the question that anyone who is invested in music stars in the movies as a whole current of cinema has to ask themselves, which is, what if Tupac Shakur had lived?
Yeah,
because this stars Tupac Shakur, and that's not unusual. You know, even back in the 90s when hip hop was still more of a sort of oppositional underground force that people didn't quite know how to handle, there was still plenty of movies starring rappers. There were very few movies starring rappers where they star opposite Tim Roth.
True. Yeah.
Like, Master P did not want to be shown up in that way. There is no film where Master P stars alongside, say, Pete Postlethwaite. It just didn't happen.
Shame.
Tragic, yeah.
For shame.
But I think this is why people wonder about, what Tupac's future film appearances would have been like, because he seemed not to see acting as just like a sidebar of his trip to world domination, as a lot of rappers and indeed general music stars do. He seemed to see acting as something that mattered because it was art and he wanted to make good art.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is one of those wonderful what ifs because he was an incredibly talented actor, utterly natural. There's no. I mean, we've talked on Pop Screen many a time about that shift between like when suddenly a pop star or a music artist will appear in a film, and you're like, it's hard to separate the
Yeah,
the baggage they have as a musical creative as an actor. You don't get that with Tupac.
no.
He just fits. It's almost like an effortless. Um, yeah, it's an effortless talent, really. And you do wonder whether. I mean, I don't know, but could he have concentrated more on acting as he got older? If he had
Yeah.
if only he had the opportunity to get older. It is a really tantalising what if. Yeah.
I mean, the measure of how much this is the case, of how much you accept Tupac as Spoon, the character he's playing here, rather than Tupac playing a role, is that he is in a band and his band does spoken word poetry. And he is not the main spoken word artist in that
No,
band.
no, that's right. Yeah,
But
would be the easy go-to, wouldn't it?
and you don't even hear them play until like the end credits, and
The
there
end
is a bit
credits.
where
Yeah.
he does a verse, and you suddenly think, "Oh yeah, Tupac Shakur
Oh yeah,
raps, doesn't
that's
he?"
Tupac. Yeah.
Like you say, any other film starring Tupac with any kind of musical dimension would have milked that ruthlessly, but you just forget about it somehow.
You do. This isn't like Eminem doing 8 Mile. It's
Although the band are called, was it a 8 Mile Road after the same stretch
Oh
of
wow,
Detroit?
yeah, yeah. Do you know what? I just didn't twig that until that last
Yeah.
minute. Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. No, it's the artist formerly known as Thandiwe Newton, isn't it? Who's now
Yes.
Tan
Thandiwe.
Thandiwe. That's it. I can never
Yeah.
pronounce that. Thandiwe Newton. Yeah, yeah. Very young in this, isn't
Yeah.
she?
Yeah, definitely. But also
Very.
still, very. I mean, you forget how much of a screen career she had very early on. By
I
this
forget.
stage,
I forget it's
yeah,
Thandiwe Newton, to be honest. Until it's only when you say, "God, this girl's good. Who is that?" And then you go,
yeah.
"Oh my God, of course, yeah."
I mean, is it the case that you forget it's Thandiwe Newton because her character is British?
Yeah, she's not having to put an accent on.
I mean, she does put an accent on. That isn't her actual voice. But I
No,
remember
that is true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when I first heard Thandiwe Newton's voice after like years of seeing her in Interview with the Vampire, Crash, The Pursuit of Happiness, all these films where she plays American characters, and she's got the most lovely voice, and she just has this wonderful, oh sweetie, really kind of voice. I fell out of my chair when I heard her interviews. It is just an out of body experience. So odd.
It's a strange one, isn't it? It's like when
Yeah.
somebody on Letterboxd said, "How is Bob Hoskins English?" I thought he was, I thought he was born under a table in a diner in Hell's Kitchen. But yet, for anybody English, you're like, "No, that's Bob Hoskins. That's just a Cockney bloke."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've genuinely thought you were going to say I thought he was an Italian American plumber who works with his brother. But yeah,
True. But yeah, it's she does do the full-on Cockney in this, doesn't she?
yeah, yeah.
And the person not doing a full-on Cockney in this is Tim Roth.
Wild. Yes.
Yeah. Just to complicate matters even further, he's back to doing an American accent again.
This is like, I imagine that Tim Roth's casting in here is very influenced by his work with Tarantino, because I feel like now he does still get cast in American crime stuff a lot, but for this kind of crime movie where it's kind of grimy and blackly comic and low key, and it's not like an action story in any sense of the word, you can see that like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction gave him a bump that, Made in England and The Cook, the Thief, the Wife and His Lover wouldn't.
It's a really interesting time in 90s Hollywood, I think, in the sense that they stopped being wholly concerned with aspirational stories,
Yes.
which seemed to be like the whole sort of state of play in the 80s. Everything was high concept and aspirational. And in the 90s, they got a bit down and dirty again, and they were happy to tell stories about people on the bones of their arse, which is stories that I love. It's to me, I could see links between a film like Gridlock'd and the sort of more social realist stuff that Tim Roth probably would have still been doing if he hadn't had, in the UK, if he hadn't had such early success in Hollywood, really.
Yeah.
You could very easily set this film in like South London or in Liverpool and have the same story play out. Because it's a universal story, isn't it?
Yeah, you could do it in Scotland, and I think that would make it very clear why someone rolled the dice on a black comedy about a bunch of loser heroin addicts at this point in the 90s.
It's interesting. I was reading about this before we came on, and it's by the writer-director is Vondie Curtis-Hall, isn't it?
Yes.
And he was saying that when he pitched it, Polygram suddenly went, "Oh no, we can't have another film about heroin. We've just released Trainspotting."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, shit, it's a film about heroin. But it was Tupac's record company who went, no, Tupac really wants to do this. Here's the money. Go and do it. And then he said, we had this wonderful about face from Polygram saying, yeah, we knew another heroin movie would be brilliant. We knew that's what people were after. So, you were going to kick our ass out the door at one point.
Yeah. And you can see it. It feels... there's a very famous old story about John Sullivan going to America and trying to pitch like a US remake of Only Fools and Horses, and just being told that no, the Trotters are losers. Americans don't watch losers. Yeah. And I think that is the sort of thing that TV executives say rather than, actual American audience members say. I think you're right. I think the 90s is one of those times when Americans are starting to go, well, actually, aren't we kind of sick of everything being Dallas and Dynasty? Don't we want to watch some people who are more authentic? And you get films like this because Spoon and Stretch are, by anyone's definition, losers. You love them. They're funny. They're charismatic. They're nice to be with. But they are total fucking losers.
Yeah, they're almost like a Withnail and I sort of partnership, aren't they? Just absolute hapless, goofy bozos on the bones of their arse, really. And they're so lovable, and they've got such brilliant chemistry together. And again, that's the thing. Who would have thought that like Tim Roth, very established actor, would have such incredible chemistry with Tupac Shakur? It's just
well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it goes back to that Tarantino thing, and I think that's the thing that briefly puts like Tim Roth and Tupac Shakur in the same kind of overlap of the Venn diagram. They're not similar people, but they're both involved in something that your parents are quite scared of. So there's that.
There is true, yeah, that's true. But 10 years, well, it was less than 10 years between them. I think Tupac was only 24, was he? Did he die at 24 or 25? Somewhere around about there, wasn't it? And I think
what it was. I mean, it's shocking.
I think when this was released, I think he'd been dead for 3 months when it was released as well.
Yeah,
and Tim Roth was 31, I think. So it doesn't, on paper, that sort of connection feels wrong, but they don't look like an older partner and a young. They look who they are. You buy into them being like, you could believe they were at school together.
Yeah.
It's not that age gap, because I believe the first choice was Lawrence Fishburne and Tim Roth.
Yeah.
Now they're both the same age, so that would have That would have worked completely.
They're both the same age, but in a weird way, you always read Lawrence Fishburne as being older, and I
Older,
think
that is true, yeah.
the
Whereas you kind
fact,
of read Tim Roth as being younger,
yeah,
and
like
that's
the fact,
probably
I think it's
where
a
it
matter of
works.
it's role choice really, because like the 90s audience, particularly a 90s audience for a film like this, would probably know Lawrence Fishburne best at this point for his role in Boys in the Hood, where he is very much
Yeah,
the older authority figure who,
yeah.
stands above these kids with their gangs and gives them lessons in civics and things. And it's like Tim Roth, for all he wasn't like that young an actor at this point, but he always played the punk. He always played the rebel.
Yeah.
He starts off Pulp Fiction as just this jerk in a bar who impulsively robs the place. There isn't much maturity and authority in his screen presence, so I think that's why he gets away with that. There is still
And
something about Tim Roth, I think, is an angry young man, and I think that's great. That's no slam at all. He's one of my favourite actors.
he's a brilliant actor. He's one of my late dad's favourites as well. He loved him in Lie to Me, the series he did
Yeah,
for
yeah,
American telly. But there is the thing you just said then about him being God, I forgot the word he used. But
punkish.
yes, it's that element throughout. He is just
Yeah,
the he's almost in another actor's hands. He'd be an incredibly irritating character.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think of an actor who could play something like that, like Kevin J. O'Connor or somebody like that.
Or
Could probably,
Jake Busey or someone like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and he would just be irritating
yeah,
and
yeah,
very obvious comic relief and obnoxious comic relief. But Tim Roth has a charm that just works completely for the role because he is a dickhead. He is a guy. He is a white guy who thinks nothing of calling a black man the N word.
yeah. That's his experience with Tarantino. That was his
Yeah,
method
that's
acting.
yeah. But it's such a beautifully pitched scene, isn't it? Where like Tupac just
Yeah,
sort of goes, and Buckham Woodbine just pulls the gun on him for saying it,
yeah.
and and you think, what a fucking dickhead, but
But
he just,
you accept it as his callowness and his
yeah,
stupidity. Like
yeah.
the guy is a heroin addict. You don't think his judgment's going to be
This is it.
perfect.
His judgment is shot to pieces at the best of
Yeah,
times, isn't
yeah,
it? But then there's wonderful punkish stuff he does where like when they're trying to escape Vondie Curtis-Hall and he's
yeah,
heavy, and they come across the two cops and that fantastic monologue he does about how he wants to join the police. Uh,
yes,
and you don't hear about you nice guys. You're you're the nice guys. You're the nice cops. And when he's walking past them, and that
yeah.
wonderful shit-eating grin he does, and they capture it in slow motion. It's like, these guys here.
I mean, when we're talking about Tim Roth as a kind of punk figure, I always remember, and it would be lovely if this happened, but Alex Cox wanted to cast him as Johnny Rotten in Sid and Nancy.
Yeah. Another great what might have been sort of casting
Yeah,
choice. Really, he turned it down because he said it was
too
too
recent.
close, didn't he? Yeah, too
Yeah,
recent. Yeah, there's some interesting sort of roles that Tim Roth has turned down over the years. He was going to be in Contact, the Alan Clark play about the
about
powers
Northern
in Northern
Ireland.
Ireland.
Yeah,
Yeah, but he just had his firstborn, I think, his first son. And Alan
yeah.
Clark said, "Stay at home, stay with you, stay with your wife and kid. You don't get these moments back.
That's
So that,
such a Clarky thing to say.
yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, and I think he was going to be Yeti in Firm as well with Alan Clark. So it's going to be
All
like
right.
a face-off between Gary Oldman and Tim Roth, which
Again.
would have been very interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, so some interesting roles he didn't do.
I think he's I really admire how honest he is about a lot of things. There was a lovely interview he did around the time that he was in Twin Peaks: The Return, where I wish I could remember where it was, but he just went through his whole career from like being on set with Stephen Frears for what's
The
Stephen
hit.
Frears? The Hit,
The
yeah,
hit.
and just been driving along in this absolutely knackered car with John Hurt and thinking, if I have to do an emergency stop, I'm probably going to kill John Hurt, am I?
I love him in that film. There's a very
Yeah,
similar sort of, again, that punkish spirit
yeah.
of an absolute dickhead, an immature dickhead, which
I mean,
is carried on. Yeah.
I think he even holds his own in Cook, Thief, for Wife and His Lover, even though it's not a great role, and he's got,
No,
Michael Gambon giving it maximum histrionics right next to him at all times, but he does good. He's good in it.
he's just such a reliable actor who pops up in really, for all I've just said then, like this roles that he turned down or wasn't available
Mhm.
for, um, the roles that he did pick to do, the films and directors that he did
Yeah,
associate with, is just superb, really.
yeah, totally. Yeah. But back to Tupac, because you mentioned briefly that this film came out a few months after his death,
Yeah,
and I think that probably really harmed it because it's like it gives you the sense of a film that it is not, and a film that before I watched it for this podcast, I assumed it was for many years, which is when you are pitched a crime movie starring a guy who was just died in what seems to be a gang-related incident. I mean, it was being reported as a gang-related incident. Over time, it becomes clear that the gang who was probably involved the most was the LAPD, but that's another
mm.
story. We'll save that for another Nick Broomfield episode, I think. Anyway, um, so you see that and you think, oh, right, it must be like a gangster movie. And he just put out All Eyes on Me, which was his big, like, gangster rap double album that moved away from the kind of more social issues based work of his earlier records and made his persona into like more of a saleable, sadly, kind of gangster figure.
Yeah, yeah.
So you think, all right, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be like 2 hours of this guy posturing, and I kind of don't want to see that when that posturing has just killed him.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's completely different. It's not that at all.
No, not at all. It's I know what you mean. I didn't watch it in the 90s. It was early noughties, I think, when I got around to watching it. And I had
Yeah.
similar preconceptions, in the sense that I wasn't sure what this film was going to be about. I heard it was about two heroin addicts, and I just thought, for some reason, I didn't think Train Spotting, which is weird because when you
Mm.
hear heroin addict film, you do think Train Spotting. I
Yeah,
thought it was
yeah,
going to be quite bleak and gritty sort of film.
yeah.
And I think I'd heard that it ends in a hospital and
Mhm.
one of them shot and the other one stabs and which is
Yeah.
exactly what happens. But I
Yeah.
thought, but I thought, oh, so it's going to be some real bleak end of film tragedy of like, a bloodbath.
Yeah.
Nothing could be further from the truth. It's like a scene from Bottom, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's like Rick and Aid have just turned up in the film.
And I don't blame anyone for not like enjoying that at the time because you're like, oh shit, how funny is it that Tupac's getting stabbed here? It's a bit too raw, but watched with the benefit of a couple of decades distance, it is exactly the kind of outrageous slapstick scene that it was meant to be.
So yeah, it's slapstick. It's so funny. It's such a it's to. I mean, I watched it again before doing the podcast, and I was crying with laughter. Even though I've seen it how many times now, I'm still crying with laughter at it. Just the way Tim suddenly just commits to just sort of like.
And the funny thing is that none of 'Tupac Tupac's films were really like that. You know, He plays a
No.
gangster in Above the Rim, but that's not really a gangster film. Poetic Justice certainly is not a gangster film. Neither is,
Yeah.
I mean, Juice kind of is, but it's also like Juice is a very serious moral film. Juice isn't the kind of nihilistic kind of gangster violence that someone like Suge Knight wanted Tupac
Yeah.
to be putting over.
What was the one
So
he did with
it's
Belushi? They were two bent cops, weren't they? I can't think what that was called. Was it Gang Related? I think it's called.
oh yeah, gang relate. That was another posthumous one, yeah, with James
Yeah,
Belushi.
yeah. Because I don't think that came out till about '97, did it?
Yeah, I was briefly getting my like 80s frat boy comedy stars mixed up because his first screen appearance was
Oh, you're thinking of the other Belushi.
uh, yeah, it's well not Belushi, but Dan Aykroyd was who I was thinking
Oh,
of.
right.
Yeah, he was he has a cameo as part of his early group Digital Underground in Dan Aykroyd's notoriously unsuccessful film Nothing But Trouble.
Yeah. I remember renting that out as a kid in the '90s on video.
Because it's got all
Because
the funny people in. It's
yeah,
got to be good, right?
it's got Chevy Chase, it's got Dan Aykroyd, it's got all the
Yeah.
funny people in, and it was utter shite, wasn't it? The only thing I remember about it now is that I was watching it with my sister and my sister's boyfriend. They were both in the 20s, and I was like little teenager. I think I must have been about 12, 13, something like that. And my sister's boyfriend decided to just keep rewinding, playing, and rewinding, playing the moment when Demi Moore gets out the car. And that's all I remember of that film now, other than it being utter shite. Yeah, but I forgot Tupac appears in that.
Yeah, I think he would prefer it to be that way.
Yeah,
Yes.
pretty ignoble start to a film career, really, isn't it?
There
That
is, yeah, like
yeah.
like Tim Roth, there are a couple of notable films that he didn't get the chance to make. He was supposed to be in Menace to Society, which would be, I guess, the closest that his film career would have got to like the gangster
The
rap world
gangster
that he was
stuff,
moving
yeah.
into. Although I think Menace to Society is still a very different film to like what people tried to paint it as. I do think that like when you read back on the moral panic about that and you watch the film, you think if you watch Menace to Society and come away thinking that it looks really cool and fun to be a gangster, you are already a psychopath.
Yeah. But then that's never stopped people, has it? People still
No.
have posters of Scarface in the living room and what have you.
Scarface, I can't. You kind of get Scarface because he ends up living it big, and yeah, he dies. But you can always flatter yourself that you're gonna miss out on that bit and just have the gaudy mansion and have sex with Michelle Pfeiffer.
Mountains of
Yeah,
cocaine.
mountains of cocaine. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Menace to Society is just relentlessly bleak. It's a
Bleak.
really,
Yeah.
in the best way, it is a really horrible film, I think.
Yeah. No, true. I mean, I'm quite glad. I mean, this sounds awful because I wish he was still with us now, Tupac. I wish he had a long life. I wish he was doing stuff.
Mm.
But in a way, you're kind of glad that those roles he didn't get typecast in those roles, because
Yeah,
I think it speaks to him as an actor,
yeah.
as a wholly separate entity from a musical performer, that he
Mhm,
was
mhm.
willing to do other different things or show a different facet to his character each and every time.
That he's willing to make a crime film like basically back to back with All Eyes on Me, where he's not the baddest, toughest gangster in the world. He's actually a really sort of pathetic, small time junkie.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's
and just
revelatory.
a genuinely sweet guy as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they both are really in it. They're both
Yeah.
sad sack losers, but they've not got a nasty bone in their bodies. They're both incredibly sweet. they both care for Cookie.
Yeah,
That's just obvious straight from the start, really, isn't it?
totally.
It's an
Yes.
interesting menage a trois that they're in, but they both, even though it's revealed that Spoon has, is it Spoon or Stretch? Tim Roth,
Tim Roth is Stretch.
Stretch. Even though Stretch later admits that he has HIV and he hasn't got around to telling Cookie, but you know
Yeah.
that even though his judgment is shot to pieces, you know that you draw the line at putting somebody at risk.
Yes. Yeah.
It's just integral. You just take it as read from what you've seen of the characters behaving around her, really, and behaving, opposite one another.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, the value of Cookie as a character who does maybe drop out a bit too much in the middle,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
she does humanize the two leads dramatically.
she
And
does, and it
yeah,
is a shame that she drops out quite a bit in the middle. But
mm,
it's hard to see what role she would fit if she didn't. It's a very worrying thing, and when I call it the men behaving badly effect, in the sense that when you're writing something, you've got two dickhead blokes in it, and you put a
yeah,
woman in the middle. All that's left for that woman to do is stand at the sideline, roll her eyes, going,
yes,
"Men,"
yeah,
and that would be horrible to have happened in
mm,
this film, because even though she's not in it a huge amount, she's a character in her own right, and she's a believable
yeah,
three-dimensional character in her own right.
yeah. I totally agree with that. I think like part of the reason why you can't really jimmy her into the middle of the film is because Spoon and Stretch would never put her in as much danger as they put themselves.
This is it. That's exactly right. Yeah, yeah. And also, the whole thing, the wonderful irony is like they're trying everything to try and get straight in that 24-hour period. And then you
Yeah,
get to the end of the film and she's on the phone saying, maybe you should think about kicking this habit and getting straight.
yeah,
And that's just a little ironic joke at the end, really, isn't it? But
yeah,
whereas if she
yeah.
was in the mix, that would be lost, wouldn't it? Because
It's
again,
true.
it would be a character. So it would be that character rolling her eyes at their antics and just saying, "Why don't you
Yeah,
do this?" And that's a nothing character for a woman, really, isn't it?
yeah. It's a thankless task. You're quite
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah. In terms of like, just think about Tupac's music because I listened to All Eyes on Me for the first time all the way through today. First observation, it's very long. It's so long. I think
It's a
in
long
general,
ass album.
it's a long ass album. In general, I think we are in a crisis of like A-list stars being able to release longer and longer albums, but I think this proves that it's not just that, it's longer than Cowboy Carter by Beyonce, longer than the Tortured Poets Department by Taylor Swift, longer than the audiobook of War and Peace. It's All Eyes on Me by Tupac, but
It's becoming the thing, though, isn't it? It is
yeah,
becoming this thing. It's like the epics suddenly boomed in like cinema in the in the
yes,
50s and 60s. It's like they're trying to do that in music now, aren't they? But it's like, but
yeah,
it's always been there. There's always been somebody who's gone, "This is my magnum opus."
yeah. It just like depends on, is that some mad art filmmaker who's making a completely uncommercial 3-hour film, or is it Christopher Nolan making $1 billion grossing 3-hour
Yeah,
film? It just depends
yeah,
on where the culture's at. But
that's true. That's true.
yeah, I liked it very much. I think it's a great album. I was not cool enough to listen to Tupac in the 90s because I think one of the things that is mind-boggling looking back at Britain in the 90s is that if you wanted to listen to rap and if you wanted to listen to more rap than just, whatever rap songs have hit the top 40 on a Sunday night, you have two options, neither of which were open to me. I was definitely not cool enough to listen to pirate radio. That's out. The other option is listen to Tim Westwood, which was like accessible but totally fucking unpalatable.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, because I'm like you, I was very, no, it just wasn't. I liked what I heard, but it wasn't really on my radar in the 90s.
Yeah, yeah.
I was a bit too much of a goody two shoes, I think. And,
Yeah, yeah, same.
and the only sort of avenue for me, I guess, was like the box, the music
Mm,
channel, the box,
mhm.
which was like, what do they used to call that? Music videos you control, where you would ring
Oh,
up.
yeah, yeah.
And I think that was the tagline with it, music videos you control. You'd ring up and you'd request, it's like a jukebox, isn't it? You'd request a music video and they would play it within like that hour.
Yeah,
And you got a lot of black rap music and hip hop.
because where else could you get it at that point?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
also because a lot of the videos were really X-rated and you got the chance to watch like
Yes.
incredibly X-rated videos at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And you just knew that somebody had rang up just to see if they would do that. And they did. So
Of course.
you're seeing, you know, girls
How do
getting,
you're saying How Do You Want It by Tupac, for
yeah, yeah,
instance.
yeah.
Yeah.
Credit cards being swiped down girls' backsides and what have you.
Yeah.
Just while you're doing your homework for the following day, this is allowed at three,
Yeah.
3 o'clock, which again added that frisson of like this sort of stuff is
Yes.
not for me. It's I'm too goody two shoes for that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I remember one of the songs that really sort of stuck in me as an earworm was which is being played at the moment because as we record this, Ramesh Ranganathan's got a new series out,
Ah,
the misinvestigations of Ramesh Ranganathan, and he'll be looking at
right.
Tupac's murder on Sunday night apparently,
Okay.
and they're playing California Love
Yeah.
over the trailer, and that was an absolute earworm of like the summer of
Yes.
'96 for me. That was
Yeah.
just in and just stayed there. I remember going on holiday. I got my GCSEs. No, finished school, done my GCSEs, waited for my GCSE results. We went to Turkey for a fortnight, and that was played everywhere. That
Yeah.
and the Macarena.
The mashup that too many DJs never got round to.
So when I hear that, the Macarena, and Wannabe by the Spice Girls, when I hear any of
Of
those three
course.
songs, they're the three
Yeah.
that take me straight back to like summer of '96.
That's your
Just left
after sun.
school. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so yeah. When I hear that, it's and a great video as well. That
Yeah.
whole Mad
Yeah.
Max spoof video.
Yeah.
It's just brilliant.
And it's strange because now, of course, you listen back to it, and yeah, objectively, I recognise that All Eyes on Me is him like going all in on gangster rap. It does have
Yeah,
quite a lot
yeah.
of bits that are very sexist, but it's also weirdly comforting. You hear that old West Coast sound with the chugging production and those like extremely high-pitched anti-aircraft synths that they used to put
This is
over it, and
it.
you'd think, yeah, beautiful,
For
love
whatever
it.
the content and however disagreeable or obnoxious that content is, the production values were incredible on
Yes.
those records, weren't they?
Yeah,
Absolutely
totally.
incredible. But no, it's when I got older and started to sort of listen to different things a lot more. It was his early stuff that I got into because it had more of it chimed with me more because it's about social
Yes.
commentary and political commentary.
Yeah.
So albums like, is it
Two,
Tupacalypse Now?
Apocalypse
That was
Now.
his
Yeah.
first album, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I still sort of remember very, very well. As just a really good album to sort of, yeah, and
And
a
that
hell of a
is,
lot shorter.
yeah, yeah, it's totally, it's not his Scorsese length one. But
No.
it's like that chimes with how Tupac was before he'd like thrown his lot in completely with Suge Knight, because I think like a recent screen appearance that Tupac has made posthumously is and another thing that is very long, which is Adam Curtis's "Can't Get You Out of My Head."
Ah, right. Yes, yes, yeah, yeah.
And if you fought your way through to the end of that without your brain exploding, which is a challenge, then you will be treated to footage of a young Tupac saying that, gangsterism is a problem not because it's crime, but because it perverts the natural urge towards revolution. And you think, I can see why, like, as transgressive as gangster rap is, I can see why they found that even harder to sell to like white suburban boys.
Yeah. And because at the end of the day, he's the son of a Black Panther, isn't he? So I mean,
Yes.
that is still, that's still going to be a hard sell for anybody. Middle America is, we like it if our black people are criminals who might carjack us, not people who might tell us that, you've had this too comfortable for too long now.
Yeah.
And that says a lot about institutional racism in America, really, doesn't it?
It really does,
and even over here as well, as we've seen recently, sadly.
As I think does the reason why I think his legacy has firmed up in recent years. There is a reason why it's happened recently, which we'll get on to. But I think for a while, the cloud over his legacy was just how relentlessly his unreleased material was being pimped out after his death, to the extent where you started to think the next Tupac album is just going to be his like dictaphone notes about what to get from the shops, because it is just relentless.
There was a point where you did have to keep pinching yourself and, no, he is dead, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because
there was a conspiracy theory that he'd fled to Cuba, and you think, well, you look at the amount of material he released after he died, and you think, no fucking wonder people thought that.
It becomes almost like a Mandela effect, isn't it? That you think,
where were you when Tupac died the second time?
I genuinely thought he died. And you see those holograms of him that was doing the rounds and the new music, and you think, this bloke died. I do remember it. It's, I remember that's just the way it is song.
Yeah.
He's dead.
He's definitely dead, and yet we're still going on. How is he collaborating with Elton John? He is dead. Yeah.
This is a dead rapper.
I do think that every time someone of like legendary status has died after that, whether that's Michael Jackson or Amy Winehouse or Prince or David Bowie, you've got like at most 2 or 3 posthumous albums spread out over a very long time. And I do think part of that is people looking at, the awfulness that after Tupac died so young in such horrible circumstances, he became a punchline because of how badly he was being exploited after his death.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that always proves is there's money in dead music, isn't there? It's just it's the same story every time, isn't it?
Yeah. At the record
the only
on their hands a dead star.
The only bigger push spike in record sales I could think of is if somebody turns up at Glastonbury.
Yeah.
It's usually the veteran stage on a Sunday afternoon, is it?
Yeah.
You by Monday or Tuesday, there's a huge spike in their sales, isn't there?
If they could merge the two, if they could have someone headline Glastonbury while being dead, that would be the ultimate.
I could make a really cruel joke about, I'm trying to think of somebody who's been on Glastonbury recently who appeared dead, and just go, well, that's happened, but I'm not that cruel, really.
Look, as you pointed out, there was the Tupac hologram. That seems to be a thing that was really gathering steam until people went, actually, no, I don't like that. Yeah.
But nobody said that yet about CGI reconstructions in film yet, have they? Unfortunately.
Counterpoint, we've all said that, but they're not fucking
No, that
listening.
is true, actually. Yeah, we have all said that. It's just that people in Hollywood haven't said that, Ian Holm pops up in the new Alien movie, I believe.
He does, yeah. I haven't seen that yet. I don't know if I will, but I've heard I've heard stuff about how, because in the original Alien, he's reduced to basically a head on the table, and apparently he's still a head on the table, but he keeps popping up on monitors telling them what to do, and you're like, right, so he's Holly. This is fucking Red
Yeah, it's
Dwarf
Holly.
now,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he's Holly.
yeah. Couldn't he just got Norman Lovett? Just a bald English guy.
Unbelievable. Yeah. But I think to round this off on like a happier note, I think Tupac's legacy is more respected now, partly because, I don't know whether they've finally finished scraping the barrel, but the spigot of posthumous releases has stopped, and now the records are on something like Spotify. You can actually discover the great stuff that he did when he was alive without,
Without that, we've
yeah,
lived through the cash cow, haven't we?
yeah,
And
yeah,
now it's a chance to stand on its own merits as to what the original catalog was. And I guess that's the great thing about generations, isn't it? They'll always, whatever generation is good, they've skipped the whole milking of the cash cow that we've endured.
yes.
They'll just go straight to the actual
Tupacalypse Now and all
yeah,
the great albums, yeah,
which
yeah.
was a great title for an album.
It's so good.
It's
Yeah.
just, I remember seeing that title and just thinking, hats off.
Yeah, yeah. Even before you've listened to the music, there's already some great lyricism going on.
You've got to, haven't you? You've got to take your hat off to that. But yeah, it's. I wish that his movies were more available. That's the
Yeah,
thing, because they're not, are they? They're pretty few. They're hard to sort of. I mean, I looked through on Letterboxd. You click on that. What service you could get this on, and
yes,
quite a lot of them you just get that. Nope, nothing here for you.
yeah,
And that's a real shame. Because we're talking films that are barely 30 years old
yeah,
or 25 years old. And we're talking films that are barely that age that feature a man who, as we've just said, has been milked to fuck. There's an
yeah.
industry here for whatever this man is associated with, but yet they're not on streaming sites. You might find them on YouTube or something like that. It's strange. It's really
It's a weird
strange.
thing, isn't it? Yeah, I think like a lot of 90s films that aren't in the kind of, Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction weight class of being established classics have trouble because they're not new films, not by a long way, but they're not of any interest to people who are like interested in quote unquote classic movies because
Classics.
they're
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
they're not like golden age Hollywood or new Hollywood. It's a tricky stage.
Yeah.
But the other thing that's brought Tupac's legacy back is, of course, his weird peripheral role in the Drake Kendrick Lamar feud, which I don't know if you've been tracking.
I've not been tracking, but I've been looking forward to you telling me all about it because you sort of dangled it like the donkey's carrot earlier on. Yeah.
Well, I think one angle on that feud that has been underappreciated is that Kendrick's first sort of real salvo at Drake, they'd been kind of doing the rap equivalent of subtweeting each other for a bit.
Yeah.
But the first like dedicated song Kendrick made about Drake was basically set about the thesis that ultimately Drake is a biracial middle class former child star from Toronto who used to make pop rap, and then he got a massive fucking complex about not feeling black enough and not feeling gangster enough, and it's led him to just become a complete embarrassment, like a minstrel show. That was that was the first charge that Kendrick laid at his door,
which is a pretty hefty charge.
Yeah, on its own, that is a pretty serious criticism of someone's artistic work. So Drake responds with tailor-made freestyle, which features an AI-generated Tupac. At which point you can almost hear Kendrick listening to this and thinking, okay, well, if you're going to make my point for me, I'm gonna go straight
Right?
onto the stuff about you being a fucking nonce.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's
I didn't know that. I didn't know about the AI generated Tupac. No, I didn't know that. The only thing I've ever picked up on the whole Drake Kendrick Lamar thing is you're a fucking nonce, mate.
but
I didn't know there was another layer that
yeah,
there's another layer that existed before that.
But yeah, it's even mentioned on Not Like Us, a record which I love because like one of the subterranean layers of this is that you suspect Drake is, well, you don't have to suspect, he basically says it on one of these songs that he is really pissed off that Kendrick gets the critical respect and he's just seen as a pop star. And
Yeah.
Not Like Us is basically Kendrick saying, look at this, I can make a big summer club banger, but you can't do what I do. And it does have absolutely hilarious reference to the AI Tupac thing where he says, I think that Auckland show is going to be your last stop."
I love these shoots though. They're just it's just like bring the popcorn and watch, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
just...
yeah. And it's sort of it's more fun than like the Biggie and Tupac feud because you know
Yeah.
that like how is this going to escalate into violence? Does Drake have like a prop gun from the set of Degrassi High or some shit?
Yeah, in some ways, it's nice to know that sometimes I wake up in the world and think, God, what a horrible world we live in. It's scary times that we're going through. And then you think, yeah, but the feud like this is happening and it's not really going to happen in any sort of...
Yeah, yeah. It's like...
it's not going to end up in a bloodbath.
And I love that even Kendrick, like, he spends the first half of Euphoria coming at it with what I can only describe as Bishop Brennan energy, where it's like, I can't believe I've been dragged out of bed again to deal with this prick.
Which should be the title of the next album.
It should, yeah. It's somehow less unwieldy an album title than Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers.
Yeah. Can't believe I've been dragged out of bed to deal with this prick. Kendrick Lamar in a night dress coming downstairs, looking really pissed off. I'm going to give you a whooping face on.
We can't top that, can we, as an ending for the show? I don't think we can.
All I will have to say, which I thought I would have said quite often in this, which I haven't said unusually, is that what a beautiful man he was, though, Tupac. Absolutely beautiful man.
I feel like with you mentioning that and me mentioning the AI Tupac, we've both loosened our belts. We're like, we've done 50 minutes and we haven't said the thing that we were really choking to say. Excellent, let's do it now. Yeah. But what a beautiful man. You are completely...
Such a beautiful man. Such a beautiful man. Yeah. Such a shame.
Yeah. So, Mark, give people a reminder of where they can find you online.
You can find me on Letterboxd. You can find me at The Geek Show. You can find me at We Are Cult. You can find me at Horrified. I think that's it. I write for Arrow Films, so you can find my ramblings in some Arrow film releases. But online, no, it's those main ones, I think.
You can certainly find me on Letterboxd as well. Just search for Graham Williamson. I also write regularly, although probably slightly less regularly by the time this comes out. I'm going to give myself a well-earned break at the Geek Show Patreon, where I've done like an entire review of the conspiracy strand of the X-Files, and it's been It's been great, but it's been an excavation. You were
He's
digging up your 90s kid soul here.
he's worked his files off. Bless him. There's a lot of you've but you say that, but you've also ignored the fact that you did the entire back catalogue of Doctor Who prior to that as well.
I did the entire classic series of Doctor Who,
Yeah.
which should
Now,
be migrating.
don't just say you've only done the entire classic series of Doctor Who, because I know then you'll be going, should I do New Who?
It haunts me. The
I know it
decision
does. I know
haunts me.
it does. Give yourself a break. You've
Yeah,
done the entire Doctor Who. You've done the entire X-Files. Give yourself a break.
Well, those Doctor Who articles should be migrating over to the geekshow.co.uk by the time this goes out. If you want a taste of what that's all about,
That's what we call a plug.
That's a plug.
Threw it up there and he knocked it out of the park.
But yeah, otherwise, we will, of course, be back in a fortnight with more Pop Screen. I've been Graham.
And I've been Mark.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
Bye.